This week, we welcome Brian Fritton, founder and CEO at Havoc Shield, to discuss how to solve the complexities of cyber insurance for SMBs. In the leadership and communication section, the board's understanding of cybersecurity. What does your CEO need to know about cybersecurity? As CISOs grapple with the C suite, job satisfaction takes a hit, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Your customers' and employees' identities are your responsibility to keep safe. But who is helping you stay safe from identity-based threats? Identity is the key to getting security right. And with the right identity partner, so much more is possible for your business than you thought. From strengthening cybersecurity to increasing revenue to reducing inefficiencies and costs, Okta unlocks growth and new possibilities for its customers. Go to securityweekly.com/Okta to learn more about Okta and the company's commitment to leading the fight against identity attacks. Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Get more information at securityweekly.com/Panoptica. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 356, recorded July 15th, 2024. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. Ben's off today, so I just got Jason Albuquerque joining me for this one today. Hey, Jason.
What's going on, Matt? Me and you, buddy, taking on the world.
Yeah, we'll have some fun in the news segment. We got some
Absolutely.
interesting.
I'm excited for these articles. There's definitely some in here I want to dig into.
Yep, and we're going to talk cyber insurance, which is an interesting topic as well. So we're going to do that first.
Absolutely.
Maximize your investment at Black Hat 2024 with a one-on-one on-site interview. Drive thought leadership and boost brand awareness with Cyber Risk Alliance's expert editorial team from Security Weekly and SC Media. Act now, limited interview slots available. Secure yours today by visiting securityweekly.com/Black Hat 2024. Brian Fritton is founder and CEO at Havoc Shield. Brian has built products and led both small and large teams in companies with prestigious credentials, such as the Fortune 500 fastest growing companies, the Inc. 5000 list, Entrepreneurs 100 most brilliant companies, and more. His experience in firms in various sizes and cultures lends itself to the creation of high-quality technical products, fast-paced development, sound infrastructure, and an ability to both set and translate needs strategically. Brian, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
So we're going to talk cyber insurance, and we've covered cyber insurance and some of the challenges with cyber insurance on the show in the past. I know Jason's got some really interesting takes from some of the challenges with state and local governments, for example. Before we get into some of the nuances, let's just kind of set the record straight on the complexities of cyber insurance, like some of the challenges. Like when I look at the different policies and the different carriers and the different brokers, like there's no real standard, is there? Like it's kind of all over the map.
Yeah, it's hard to consume even for somebody who does this all day long. And by the way, I'm not a long time career insurance professional myself, right? I got started in the technical side and then grew up in security. And so I've learned a ton about this in the last 5 years or so. Biggest thing I've learned is, there are soft markets and hard markets, and there are innovations in both those markets that, cyber insurers try to bring to bear to win over customers, or more importantly, for them to keep customers. And I think that the space is getting better at plain language in terms of, the terms that are actually set there, and not having it be 80 pages long, but eight, or hopefully. But there are a lot of roadblocks to that happening. There are a lot of entrenched and established parties, and sort of like old PDF born ways of working. And it takes some serious patience to get through those sometimes.
Yeah. Um, and I see it like, so when I go out for my business and get a policy, it's just like a checkbox rider,
Mhm.
right? It's like kind of attached to your general liability insurance. And I never check the box, by the way, because I'm like, well, I've been in the space long enough. If I can't figure this out on my own, I'm in trouble. But as a small to medium business, which I am in my LLC, right? It's like, well, I check the box, but then what does that mean? Like, how much coverage? And I think that's a challenge. And then you have other carriers that to get any coverage, it's not a checkbox. It's like this huge questionnaire that you have to fill out to really scope in. So how do you help guide clients through, like, do you just do the little checkbox one, or should you do the more exhaustive control based one? Like, what's the difference?
Well, I'm going to say at the least you should definitely check the box, because it's just a few bucks, right? If you haven't had past claims, especially, and your website's mostly brochureware, you're not hosting a bunch of stuff on AWS, you're not in the financial industry, it's a pretty cheap way to transfer some pretty significant risk, right? And as you said, SMBs, they don't have time for this, whether it's a standalone policy with its own dedicated premium or it's a rider. They got to get back to business doing what they're doing. They don't have time to understand the nuances of this stuff. And so, first off, yeah, getting coverage here is nowadays sort of a good move. And then it comes to, yeah, as you said, these different types of controls and the veracity at which they enforce them with. And it kind of changes based on how many claims are coming up out there, and how much ransomware is impacting people's lives and all that sort of stuff. Uh, but you say it right, is that some folks care more about risk control in their book of business and validating those types of things than others. The other folks tend to have lower sublimits. They tend to deny claims more often. And so I tend to pick the folks that actually do have a bit more ferocious verification of you saying, of you doing what you say you're doing. And so, one of the things that we try to do is be an advisor to both brokers and clients in the process, in the application process, right? And so, these controls, whether they're, hey, backups or multi-factor authentication or secure remote access, whatever they might be, and every carrier has different flavors. A lot of times, the question reads like Latin, and it's Times New Roman, where you feel like you're going to be in trouble no matter how you answer. And so we try, like, sort of like how TurboTax simplified doing your taxes and bringing it into this, plain language, common, guided experience. We try to do that with those types of things. And when you have gaps in your understanding, we try to lead you down the path of getting a answer to that makes sense to you, so you can get back to work.
So Brian, I mean, you talk about you want folks to check the box so they can go through the initial process, but ultimately we don't want to encourage a check the box mentality, right?
Yep.
So now,
Right.
how is Havoc Shield helping their customers in that, let's call it, continuous improvement of their cybersecurity program, right? Because we don't want to leave them with that thought of, I'm checking all the boxes, I'm transferring the risk, I'm good to go, I'm going to walk away and not worry about it anymore, right? I think
Right.
we have to take a little bit more diligence there, and make sure where the consultative type folks are going to say, listen, this is a journey now, right? From here
Right.
on, we're going on this continuous improvement journey. What do you do at Havoc Shield to make sure they're on that journey and they're continuously improving and continuously getting better?
Yeah. And to your point there, Jason, if you check the box and you just say, great, I got my policy, and you move on, and something does happen, usually you're going to get a talking to by the claim staff and the attorney involved and all that sort of stuff. And you might just straight up get denied because you said you had MFA or you attested to these things being in place, and come to find out you didn't. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily a good idea to just check the box. So what we do is we marry, foundational cybersecurity best practices and a real program with your policies. So we have a number of partnerships out there, backing carriers like Beasley and Tokyo Marine, really well respected carriers, especially in the cyberspace. And we put a layer of education and control sort of verification in front of our core product, which is a cybersecurity program built for startups and small businesses. And again, kind of back to the TurboTax reference, we make it easier to do these things where you usually got to work with 18 different vendors to do 18 different solutions and figure out how to roll it out and did I configure it correctly and all these types of things and then put the policies in place. We turn that into a step-by-step guided process that so easy that the intern can do it. And so we've married that sort of core product offering with this experience of going through and going, what the hell, when you see a cyber policy application. And when they've done things themselves, we make sure that we ask the right follow-up questions and we do some scanning to say, yep, great, you've done it the right way. And when they haven't, they have inevitable gaps. We let them know what solution they can put in place. We provide some recommendations of where they can go. And if they so choose, they can use our underwriting pre-approved solution there so that they know, hey, it's a couple of clicks. I know it's going to get approved.
Yep. Now, how do you handle? You mentioned kind of the IRS taxes reference. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but in some way, shape, or form, that may be a little bit easier because there's defined tax law, right? There's definitions there that TurboTax can follow. How do you handle standardization? Is great, right? But every business is a little bit different. Every healthcare organization may be a little bit different. They may have a little bit different culture, risk tolerance. How do you take it to that next level where it's a semi-personalized based on the culture of the business or based on the risk tolerance of the business? Or because again, the IRS side of the aisle may be a little bit easier, while it may be a library of tax law. At least it's on the books, right?
I thought I'd hear anyone say taxes are easier than anything. Yeah, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Right? Right?
So we found out pretty early in this business that we weren't going to be able to make this work for small businesses with just software. And so what we did is we started more heavily investing into what you traditionally call professional services, but you can't make money, you can't charge the right type of price you need for SMBs to get them to actually sign on to this with, just the, project by project, quote by quote type of professional services that maybe like a virtual CISO would offer. So what we did is we really carefully tuned our internal tools to make that more efficient. And we have an excellent sort of playbooking exercise internally when we look at doing something for clients that requires a human in front of the loop. We hire highly technically capable individuals who are very well aware of the long tail technology problem and the fact that people that don't understand this stuff and necessarily don't have time to understand this stuff. And then we put that human in front of our technology, back ended by some very good playbooks and internal tools, so that they can efficiently run that. And so the answer is we put a human in front of them so that they can talk to a human.
Great. The consultative approach, right? That's
Yep.
where you bring in your consultants. Great.
Yeah, because to Jason's point, right, there's like 4,000 security vendors. There's no way to get an understanding of like which of those 4,000 should I even think about deploying, right? I mean, for us in the field, right? We track this stuff and we talk about this stuff every week. I don't know how a small to medium business person would even be able to wrap their heads around this. So it sounds like you're not only marrying consulting with guidance, but then also kind of pre-canned solutions to kind of bring something together to make it easier for the SMBs to consume?
That's right. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a longer story as an answer to that. So I started the business because I was in this like hot seat of someone responsible for defending a company in the past multiple times, right? As a IT director, as a small company CTO, as a VP of engineering, what have you, right? And I was always the guy that got just put in charge of security when a bigger client required it, or we had a scare, or we had to comply with some financial industry regulation or something like that. And I didn't come from the security world, so I really had to train myself up. And in the job before this business, I got put in charge of defending the software responsible for hosting about 9 out of every 10 national and state level political campaign strategy hubs in 2018 during the midterms. If you remember back to that, there was a lot of conversation about cyber attacks, and so I got to work with some really very, very intelligent, very expensive blue chip providers, law enforcement, the intelligence community. And what it taught me is, what good looks like there. And then I had to marry that back with the next job I was going to get was going to be the same position where I've got to comply with these things. I don't have that time. I don't have that attention or that budget. And so what we decided to do is opinionate very carefully what the best practices and security frameworks say you should do to the realities of running a small business. And so while we're backed in frameworks like CIS and NIST, we do not use those as gospel, right?
Mhm.
And we curate the program based on the priorities of our client coming in.
Because
Very
I
cool.
can tell you 1,008 controls out of NIST 853 will not fly for most SMBs.
Right. Yep.
100% agreed, right? And the other side of the aisle too is the SMB market is a tough market because there's a tremendous amount of pressure, budget constraints, a level of agility to keep the business up and running, economic pressures, especially right now for small and medium businesses. I mean,
Yep.
this is a tough time for SMBs right here, right? So how do you help them either discover cost-effective approaches that are going to be effective, and or put them on a journey where they're not going to have to spend $1 million out of the gate to remediate some risk or lessen their risk, right? How do you
Yeah.
get impact in a cost-effective way for these SMBs so they're not going out of business because of the requirements that they're going to have from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah, because it's easy to spend budget in security.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Uh, First thing is, what are you using already that could be configured better or you can get more use out of? Are you using Google Workspace and you don't have MFA enforced? All right, that's the first thing we're going to turn on and train your staff right on. Do you have access to any other resources using the SaaS that you pay for, the devices that you're using, those types of things that we can harden and configure to add new layers of defense. So that's one of the very first things we do. We built a feature called Guidance Assistant that literally like overlays point and click guidance on how to configure things in these administrative interfaces for you, and that's free stuff. Then we look at this economic component of these 80 different vendors out there, right? One, it's time savings. So we have done all of that diligence on behalf of our clients, right? We have gone out there and said, when it comes to training or EDR or backups or what have you, these are the best providers out there. And then we've really deeply integrated them. So you don't have to go and do that same work. And then lastly, when it comes to actual dollars and cents, is given our aggregate seat size, right? We work with really small businesses, but since we've got a good collection of them, we have a big aggregate seat size. And so what we get to do is we get to go to those blue chip vendors and we get to negotiate on our terms, and we tend to pass those savings on to our clients on a per seat basis. So if you're looking over and you're trying to get a backup solution that's $15 a seat, and you're as a 20-person company, you're not going to get much better than that. What we're able to get is a much better deal and tiered pricing that we can create some predictability for you, and then we pass that on.
Right.
Crash plan's $10 a seat, I think. Roughly. It was. Now that I'm on auto renewal, who knows how much they charge me.
Right.
So then you bundle all that up as part of. So, I mean, when I think about what Havoc Shield is, it's not necessarily just. It's almost like a service provider, right? To an extent, I don't know if you consider yourself a managed security service provider, but
Mhm.
you are providing aspects of solutions and guidance to kind of solve the cyber risks, both from a solution perspective, but then also how to balance that with cyber insurance.
That's right. So when it comes to the program as a whole, it's not just roll this out, roll that out, right? It's also policy and procedure, and it's good configuration, and it's training, and it's monitoring, and everything that a good foundational cybersecurity program calls for. And some of that is technology, and some of that is
Right.
services, on top
Mhm.
of that, as it just requires to do a good job by our clients. When it comes to the insurance piece, what our partners saw us doing a good job of is exactly what we're talking about, which is, solving this economic and time problem when it comes to, your investment and security program for clients in the first place. And we got reached out to by a number of folks saying, hey, we need as insurers to increase the complexity or comprehensiveness, I should say, of our controls, but we're having equally a hard time explaining what those things are to those clients or the brokers. And for an SMB client, these brokers really aren't earning that much money on them, right? And so they don't have hours to explain this stuff, even though a lot of them are very well versed in it. So they look to us to provide tools to educate them, and we built some good tools to map our knowledge of how to work your way through these controls, to the questions they're asking, and it grew naturally from there. And so today we have a number of products that we offer to the insurance industry that help educate both brokers and clients what your controls are, help discover and navigate this long tail of technology problem of, oh, okay, well, I kind of use that, I kind of use this, and helping sort of figure out, do you comply or not, and how to get there. And then also, when it's appropriate, presenting solutions to fill that gap. And then we, to an extent, basically are able to offer incentives at a policy level, so lower premium, higher limits, lower deductible, all that good sort of good stuff when you go through it, because these insurers can have confidence that what you've actually said is what you've actually done.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so I've seen some of the insurers and the brokers try to figure out this kind of math, right? Like if I know these controls are in place and I can reduce your premiums or I can increase limits. You shared some numbers with me when we did the prep call for this a few months back. Um well, it's discount premiums were what, 9 to 12%, so a reduction. I mean, that could be a potentially pretty big number for some, right? Roughly 10% premium reduction. Higher ransomware supplements. That was kind of important, I think, with all the ransomware we've seen lately. What does that equate to? Like, is it double? Like, how do you measure those additional supplementals for ransomware?
Yeah, it changes by partner, so it's certainly not up to us, right? We're advisors in that process, but it is substantial. And
Hmm.
carriers right now, and their product innovation partners, um, uh, are pretty careful about that ransomware limit these days, for I don't know what reason, right? Um, and so the rate, I would probably say it's an average increase of like 50% of the limit. So it's material.
It's material. And the last one was some of your reduction in deductibles as well.
Mhm.
Also, up to what, like 25% or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a 25% reduction in the deductible, and that counts when you're looking at the chaos of responding to a breach. Even if you have insurance, there's some serious time and money investment there anyway, and so it's one of those sort of show of good faith by the insurer under our support to say, look, we know you've done the right thing, so we're going to reward you there with financially. And on the other side of it, too, one of the things we have coming that I can say a little bit about right now with some of our partners is this term called betterment, and it's sort of been flowing around out there in the cyber liability, insurance space for a while, but it's sort of never been fully taken up. And so what we're doing with some of our partners is actually, if you've got a breach on your hands and you go through one of these partner policies, is right now the incident response team make sure that they've stemmed the bleeding and they get you back to where you were before, but they really don't give you any better defenses in front of you. And so it's just kind of like being dropped back in the pool against being statistically now more likely to be attacked again. And you have a lot of these breach coaches, these attorneys that run this on behalf of the client, um, feeling bad because they're saying, sort of goodbye, see you next time, almost, because they're not leaving them really any better. And so we are now bringing into some of these partners the idea that you can exchange some betterment costs, some program betterment there under the policy dollars for a much lower risk that you're going to see that client in a claim again.
Yeah, that was actually a question I had to ask you, because there have been so many times that, my organization has helped folks through an incident response. And you have the fiduciary, the attorney, who basically says you'll only be funded for apples to apples,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we'd come to the table and say, hey, listen, for the same cost or less, we can make this organization more secure. We can help harden what they had and reduce the risk of them getting exposed again. And the answer to that was no, it will not be funded. So
Yep.
talk to me a little bit more about the betterment capability to influence these fiduciaries, these attorneys. How do you do that? Because that's a difficult conversation, because ultimately they're looking apples to apples, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
how do you influence that?
I think the breach coaches are stuck between a rock and a hard place, honestly. So we've talked to a lot of these guys and gals, and uh, frankly, they have to go by what the policy says, and they
Hmm.
have to keep their relationship solid with the carrier so that they continue to be that authorized attorney on that type of stuff. And so they can only do so much within the boundaries of the policy at hand. And so really, I have to bring this back to our policy innovators, our MGAs, and our carriers.
Yeah.
And there is, like, this is being discussed now. And I think Betterment is modernizing. And I hope that we're not the only ones that are going to come out with something around this, because it's obvious, right, Jason, as you were saying, is why wouldn't, for the same price, you let me put, you on Office 365 rather than replacing your hosted Exchange
Exactly.
certificate?
It's common sense. And at the end of the day, you'd think the carriers would look at it as risk reduction, right?
Yep.
Let's take advantage of the same spend or less, and let's reduce the risk. To me, it's common sense.
And the IR folks are great friends of ours, but this is not
Right.
their core, their zone of excellence, right?
Right.
They need
Mhm.
to move on to the next engagement, and unfortunately, there's plenty of them. And for most SMBs, which is what we solely focus on, there's just not enough money there to make an engagement happen, usually either. And so, speaking to us, we had this sort of unfair advantage of we've got all of this software and this curation capability and these playbooks where we can actually do it and make money and save money for everyone.
Yeah, I'm going through this right now through my own personal life, right? Because as Jason knows, my house got flooded, right? So, I'm working with contractors to try to rebuild the house. Well, sometimes you want to put it back a little differently or better, but then you get limits on what you
Mhm.
can and can't do during the process. The same thing exists here in cyber, right? If I had a inferior set of tools, or I was spending money on something that didn't actually help mitigate the risk, like, why wouldn't I make improvement when I rebuild my program or rebuild, the infrastructure back from scratch? So I know what it's like, because I'm actually playing that
Mhm.
GC role right now to be like, all right, how do I put my place back together, but also improve it as we go? Because the insurance company is just like, yeah, well, here's what it was. That's it. And I think we have the
Right.
same challenges here in cyber.
Absolutely. I hope it dries up soon.
Yeah. So
Yes.
question for you. I mean, a lot of this conversation is all well and good for organizations that are going to get approved or have already been approved for cyber liability insurance. How do we tackle the struggles that we're seeing right now of organizations who are getting denied? I'm seeing that more and more. Matt alluded to it at the beginning of the show. I've seen every municipality, every local municipality, city, town, school district in my state get a letter last year that said, the carrier is no longer going to support you for cyber liability insurance. if you don't meet these 15, 20 criteria, you're not even going to qualify to be looked at by another carrier or another organization. And it set panic to those
Yep.
municipalities and those governments. And since then, I've seen more and more small to medium businesses, mid market, emerging enterprise getting denied, and then them coming to us saying, what can we do so we can get cyber liability insurance? What are you seeing with those challenges, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, at various points in the cyber insurance market, it's hard sometimes and it's soft sometimes. I think we're sort of leaving the softness of the market that we were in here for part of 23 and the first part of 24, and it's becoming a hard market again.
Mhm.
And it'll be soft again in the future, but right now the claims that are occurring are starting to change underwriters' minds about the veracity of which they want to put, especially sensitive verticals through when it comes to their controls. And municipalities are a big one.
Yeah.
Our partners talk a lot about that. And part of it's because there's a huge amount of data spread, a huge amount of legacy, software in play there. Regularly, I would say, undertrained employees when it comes to what to look for as an indicator of compromise. Um, but the guidance I'd have for municipalities is the same that I would have for everyone, which is talk to someone like you, Jason, ahead of time.
Right.
Get the blank application and look at what the controls are. Make sure that you have a reasonable foundational cybersecurity program. Make sure you train your staff. You got MFA on all that sort of good stuff, and then have your service provider, whether it's us or an MSP or you're really really good IT person who works internally. Uh, Write up a letter about all of it that you do, put some screenshots on there so that the proof is obvious, and deliver that with your application.
Hmm.
And if you can say that proactively, you just get your underwriter or your broker even before them in a whole different state of mind about how to represent you.
Now that makes a lot of sense. On this show a lot too, we talk about how we can help cybersecurity professionals influence the business, right? For municipalities, it'd be how do you influence the city council? For businesses, the board of directors or the ownership. How do you help your clients get that voice? Because in
Hmm.
so many instances, it's going to be influencing leadership for investment, right? It's going to be influencing a board of directors or a city council or something, or the CEO or the CFO. When it comes to a mature cybersecurity program and the ability to actually get cyber liability insurance or reduce the costs of it, um, how do you consult with your clients and get that voice of the champion, be able to influence? Are you helping organizations do that as well? Cybersecurity leaders do that as well?
We are, and unfortunately, the cyber insurance piece of this is a useful tool in doing that right now because
Mhm.
most organizations, I shouldn't say most, a lot of organizations have requirements around cyber insurance, right?
Mhm.
They've got a bigger client or regulatory requirements of their board or whatever, and they must go get it. And so, as we just talked about, these folks are getting denied. It's getting harder. They're spending a lot more time on it. Hey, how about a reasonable cybersecurity program to begin with? Because we can make that a whole lot easier. And so it's sort of the roadblock that we can unblock there, and the premiums get higher if you don't do that. So financially, we can make that make sense pretty easily. But on a broader base, even beyond insurance, there's a lot of folks that choose not to get it. Um, how do you convince leadership to invest here? Part of it is make it close to home. And I think my opinion is security has and probably always will be a pretty reactive buy. You got to react to something. So how do you get people to be more proactive? Is you have them react to things that feel pretty close to home. So if they're a small credit union, let's pull up all of the news in just the last month about small credit unions in your state, in your area, who have had to deal with this. Let's run a cyber risk assessment to show you what attackers can see with the same freely open available tools that we use. And then let's run a couple scenarios where you're gonna discover pretty quickly you're not ready if an event does happen.
Yeah. Brian, if people want to get some more information about Havoc Shield, where should they go?
HavocShield.com is the place to go there if you just want a little bit more information in the you know, spirit of putting the human in front of the technology. However, I always give out my email. So it's just Brian, Brian, at HavocShield.com and happy to.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.